Hello all, welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can we use global variables without initializing them in Java? The answer is yes. In Java programs, we can use global variables without initializing them. That means you don't have to assign any value to the global variables in order to use them in the Java programs. It's not compulsory. If you don't even initialize also, we can still use these global variables in our Java programs. Why? Because Java by default will consider some default values for this particular global variables, which are declared with different data types. According to the declared data types, some default value will be considered, even though you don't initialize these global variables in Java programs. And even though you start using them without initializing them. So for example, if you have declared this global variable as in data type, and you have not initialized the value, any value to that particular variable, and if you start using that particular variable in the programs, then Java will consider a default value like 0 for that variable because that is of in data type. For the next data type, let's say double data type, okay? Java will consider 0.0 as a default value if you don't initialize that variable declared with that particular data type, global variable, okay? Then if you have declared that global variable as a Boolean data type and you have not initialized any value, Java will consider Boolean value false by default. Okay. If you have not even assigned also, it will consider false. Okay. Like that, every data type, for example, every data type in double, okay, this Boolean, etc., some default value will be considered by Java automatically, even though you don't initialize and start using that kind of variables, global variables in the programs. So let me practically demonstrate this one. For that, I'll switch to the Eclipse ID and create a new class. I'll right click, new class. I'll just randomly name this class as class O with main method or any method, that's okay. Now, here I'm going to create a global variable. Let's say static int A. I'm not going to assign any value to this variable. Okay. Similarly, I'll give static B. This is lowercase. Then I'll give static int double. Then we have other one like Boolean, let's say Boolean C. So three global variables I created, guys. For none of these variables have assigned any value, initial value, or I have initialized these variables. But if I start directly using them in the programs, let's say I want to print the value of this variable A, even though I have not assigned any value to the variable A, still I am trying to print the value that is stored in the variable A. So what happens? Since I have not initialized these variables, you may think that Java compiler may give you an error here to initialize these variables with some values so that the values will get printed in the output using these print statements. But that's not going to happen. Why? Because for global variables, it's not compulsory to initialize them. It's not compulsory to assign some values. If you don't assign, some default value will be considered by Java for each and every of these variables. For example, for A, which is of int data type, 0 default value will be considered. For B of double data type, 0.0 as a default value will be considered even though you don't have assign or initialize. For C, false, default value false, Boolean value false will be considered. Okay, if I run this program, 0, 0.0 and false will be printed in the output. 0, 0.0 false got printed in the output console. So this is applicable only for the global variables, guys. The global variables are the variables in Java which are directly created under the class and outside the methods. Outside the methods, we have created these variables. So these are called as global variables. What if the same variables are there inside the method? That is, if you try this with local variables, is it possible in Java to use the local variables if you have not initialized them? It's not possible, guys. Okay, if you say int A, double B, then Boolean C, this is not going to work in this way. Okay, for global variables only, this kind of option is there, but in Java, for local variables, the variables which are created inside the methods or inside the method or methods are called as local variables. For all the local variables, in order to use them, first we have to initialize them and then we have to use them in the program. Otherwise, we are going to get a compiler error saying local variable may not have been initialized. That means you have to initialize them with some value. But for global variables, it's not compulsory. Okay. So hope guys you got an idea how you can use global variables without initializing. So the answer is yes for this question. Can we use global variables without initializing them? Yes. So with practical demonstration, I've answered this question for you. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye bye.